Thank you so much, Ms. Singh, for joining us.
Inviting me.
Again, a month back, we celebrated your journey in the TV, journalism world Lifetime Achievement Award. I want to start with that one question that when you look back at the journey and how TV has evolved over a period of time, what changes do you see in the biggest shifts in the newsroom that have occurred over maybe a couple of decades?
So, that's a long journey. So, I think what has changed in the television newsrooms, I think the most important change has been that journalism is no longer limited to one medium. So I think, in fact, when we talk about television news, I think we have to realize now that news cannot be put into the boundary of the screen you're watching it on. And I think the best news stories are the ones that transcend that. So for instance, the screen or the TV, in a sense, can be a front page of a newspaper, it can be the home page of a website, and it can be your mobile screen, and it could be a television screen, but is it cable or smart TV? So I think those are the different challenges, but I think what remains essential is the core, which is what's the headline. You'll find that any good editor, you'll come and give them a brief for a story, and it can ramble into 10 minutes, but any good editor will cut you short and say, what's the headline? And I think that's really the point of it, that what is the one piece of information you're giving the viewer, the reader, the online, whatever, netizen, that they don't know already. And I think if your story doesn't have that, you need to go back and try again. So I think that's really different. But I think the various things you have to compete with, being a video journalist, being a print journalist, being a television journalist can be daunting for newcomers. But I think if they realize that basically it's about the basic, how good your story is, that would help. And that's the biggest change you're seeing in newsrooms around you now, that no newsroom is limiting itself anymore to being just television or just print or just digital. It's integrating. So you'll hear integration and convergence as the big buzzword now for the next years ahead.
One other thing that we often hear about television is that television is toxic. There is no news. It's just an amplification medium. How do you respond? How would you respond when people label television as these?
I think the biggest enemy of television news has been television itself. So I think I do have to say that I would agree with many people who feel that there is some element of television which has become toxic. It began with what was quite new to Indian television about, say, 15 years ago, the talk format. And when it began, it was exciting. It seemed to be a situation, and at Ndtv we were lucky that we had a situation where even the Prime Minister had joined a debate once on the big fight. We had Mr. Arun Jaitley and Mr. Kapil Sibal who often would agree to come and debate with each other on any of our shows. So those were times when you had people of political gravitas and intellect, which would have very strong opinions of their own, but would also have the dignity and the intellect. I think, again, this boils down to the intellect of listening to another person's point of view, of accepting that this person who is debating with me is not necessarily someone who is my enemy. But I think after Talk TV evolved, or we had an outbreak of channels and very different politics at some point coming in as well, that it became about a political enmity, and that I actually won't confine that to politics. It became about who scores the most points. My point of view is better than your point of view, and it's who can shout louder. And once that fueled into what I would really say is toxic, is a toxic TRP system, it just became worse and it spiraled out of control. So I think that is a problem television news has faced. It's a problem television news has to fix. I think there is some realization of that happening now. And I hope there will be a change, and the change will come really from the people who are watching when they say that we feel this is not what we want to watch on our screens.
I'll ask you two more questions. I want to throw this forum open. What is your view on ratings?
Well, as you know that NDTV's exited ratings. It's not necessarily a permanent decision, but we do feel that the ratings have limited journalism. And I do think, and this I've said earlier as well, I think journalism, because I mean, again, I don't want to limit to television. I think journalism is something which is at the end of the day for public interest. And you cannot have public interest being rated in as if it's a Bollywood film at a box office. At the end of the day, it's not only about what you feel that people want to know, but what they should know. So I think, and that again is where I think the roles of editors plays a very important role in a newsroom or in the newspaper or any online site, because eventually why would you watch, say, NDTV or India Today or Times Now versus another channel? You're watching it for an editorial point of view. And I think that is something which is extremely critical. I think that's what separates one TV channel from the other. I think that is what had, for NDTV, was a major differentiator. So I think the TRPs kind of flattened that out. It became all about entertainment, and it became, as you said, toxicity, I think, was linked to TRPs in many ways. But I think that hopefully will change. Again, I feel in TRPs, it cannot be a monopoly system. You cannot have a ratings agency which is just one for such a, it's a multi-crore industry. So you need to have more ratings agencies, and you need to have much, much more transparency. I mean, the same standards we demand from politicians, from government, is the standards which you demand from agencies which say that they determine what India watches. I mean, as I think Sukumar made the point, there's no one India, and no one agency can determine what India watches.
Absolutely. My final question, recently we saw this boycotting of 14 anchors, and there was a lot of backlash on that. Do you think that is, there could be a better way of, kind of dealing with a non-cooperative media, or, there's a better way of doing this than boycotting anchors?
No, of course. I mean, firstly, why should media be cooperative?
No, in the sense, not in that sense. I mean to say they could have, kind of done it in a different way, yes.
I absolutely am against boycotts in any form. I said I do feel at the end of the day that we do have courts, you do have other ways to address if you feel an anchor is crossing a line. I mean, I don't support boycotts in any form of any anchors.
Okay, let's open this to some questions. Okay. Those who have not asked questions here, please. Yes, please.
Good morning.
As Rahul Amin sir mentioned, TV is being toxic. Do you think digital media will replace one day TV media? And second question is, you talk about convergence, TV media, digital media. Is it because the TV is being taken as toxic elements, so the TV media want to attract digital media audience, or they are, I mean to say, are they forcefully doing it, or they want to explore in that section also?
See, again, when we say TV, I don't want to generalize. I don't think all TV is toxic. I'm part of television. I'm very proud of it. But I do think that there were very toxic elements which emerged, which we need to fix. And we need to fix it urgently before viewers lose faith in the medium. Television, and toxicity sadly can transcend any medium. So you can have digital media which is toxic. What worries me about digital is the fact that I think we are creating many echo chambers. People will watch only the anchor they like or the view they agree with. And I think that's really, really dangerous for any democracy, and especially there's so many young people for young people. Because this is the time when you need to explore, different ideologies, where you need to look, differentiate between fact and fiction. Really, that has to be the key thing. Now, if you're listening only, news can't be a playlist. So it can't be just what you'd like to hear. And I think that's one of the issues that with YouTube, that we see many journalists who have extremely loyal fan following. I mean, it's almost like political fan followings, and they will follow them. And if anything is said by that journalist, it is truth, whether it's X or Y. There's no challenging. You have to have the same challenging perspective, whoever you're watching. It can be somebody who's very senior, it can be somebody who's very junior. So I don't like that thing of digital where it's become about that you don't need editors, you don't need 2 points of view, you don't need 3 points of view, you need only my point of view. I think that is something which is in digital is not great. In fact, young people should use digital to listen to a diversity of views, especially views you don't like, because that makes you think.
And one further question. Ma'am, it is said that at least in digital media, there is clear cut ki he is from left, he is from right. But in frontline media, or you can say in TV media, there is an envelope. That envelope is covering that he is not from any side, but they are biased. मतलब they are biased. It is a type of allegation. Do you don't think that this differentiate between the digital media and the TV media?
I don't think so, because I don't think that you have to declare allegiance. Why does it have to see every person in this room will have a personal bias? They will vote for someone or the other. The point is that are those biases reflected in their professional work, right? So I think that's, I mean, it can be anybody. It could be a journalist, of course, but it can be somebody who's a doctor, it can be somebody who's a policeman, it can be someone. Do those biases reflect in their professional life? Can the viewer see the bias? That's the problem. If the viewer feels that this person is biased because of his personal views or personal affiliation, that is an issue. But hopefully viewers are smart enough to know, and if they feel, and we've seen that also, that if there is some journalist who's seen as biased, there is a backlash. So I don't think that will change on digital or television, or that in digital it's all right if the person declares his allegiance. The point is journalists should not have political allegiances in their professional lives. Personal allegiances, of course, many journalists have it. I'm married to a politician, so that is a separate issue. But the point is, does their work reflect that?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Anand, our colleague from Samachar for Media, yes.
हेलो मैम,
Hello.
इधर
हाँ.
आनंद पाराशर, समाचार फॉर मीडिया। मैम, अभी करंटली जो चैलेंजेस फेस कर रहा है टीवी, वो है सोशल मीडिया से, डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म से।
जी.
एक चीज़ बहुत देखने में आती है जिसको ऐसा लगता है कि न्यूज़ चैनल्स इस चीज़ को लेके गंभीर नहीं है, वो है फेक न्यूज़। क्योंकि सोशल मीडिया में बहुत तेज़ी से चीज़ें फैलती हैं, और टीवी में जो कई बड़े प्रोग्राम्स होते हैं, कई बड़े इंटरव्यूज़ होते हैं, उनकी छोटी सी क्लिप को वायरल कर दिया जाता है, और जब तक स्पष्टीकरण आता है, क्लैरिफिकेशन आता है, वो लाखों करोड़ों लोगों तक पहुंच चुकी होती है। तो इस दिशा में एनडीटीवी किस तरीके से काम कर रहा है, और आने वाले दिनों में किस तरीके से आप इस चैलेंजेस को फेस कर रहे हैं? एडिटोरियल में कैसे आप इस चीज़ को फेस करते हैं कि ऐसा कुछ कम से कम एनडीटीवी के प्रोग्राम्स के साथ तो ना हो?
नहीं, that's a good point. और actually NDTV के ज़्यादातर वो fake surveys आते हैं जो opinion polls या ऐसे कुछ आते हैं. That's really because of the NDTV credibility in that area. So usually the focus so far has been on fake news in the newsroom. So how to make sure, because especially जैसे आपको पता है that often viral videos come. So straight away the newsroom wants to put it on air कि this is an earthquake somewhere, or this has happened here. But we have seen in some situations, especially in tense situations like riot situations or communal situations, putting fake videos on air has very, very real consequences. So our real focus has been on how to fix fake videos, fix meaning make sure that they don't get on air. That has been our big worry. We haven't really looked at whether NDTV clips are being misused on digital media. As soon as we get to know of it, of course, we issue statement, legal rights, but it hasn't been a major focus yet, because the big worry has been how to stop fake videos from going on air.
Okay, yes, please. We have 10 minutes, so yes, we will come
मैम,
to you.
एक और मेरा आपसे छोटा सा सवाल था।
Anand ji, sorry, offline.
Good morning, ma'am. So
Good
my
morning.
question is that TV media is heavily burdened by advertisements. So whenever we see a channel reporting something, most of the screen is covered with advertisements. So the anchor is at the top of the corner, he is not very much visible, and everything is covered with advertisements. So how do you perceive that? I mean, what are your point of views?
I mean, that is an economic reality. I think Sukumar will agree with me on that. We all need ads to pay salaries. We need ads to have budgets, news budgets. We need ads for various reasons. So we all try to be creative about it so it doesn't actually interfere with the content. But I agree that in some places, it sometimes covers a huge portion of the screen. But it really is something that is an economic model, which until it's fixed or until we come up with alternative ways. I mean, one way, of course, is subscription, but most people are used or prefer to see their news free. So as long as that is happening, the only model of revenue is actually through advertisements. So there's not much choice left there.
And you also see sometimes so many panelists and a speaker at a different forum said this is the Ravan school of journalism. Anyway. Okay.
No, the Ravan school is the one with the many heads.
Many heads, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
एक मिनट, मेरा सवाल।
I'll come to you.
मेरा सवाल सर, एक छोटा सा।
पंकज जी।
हेलो मैम, दिस इज पंकज शर्मा फ्रॉम समाचार फॉर मीडिया। एक छोटा सा सवाल है मैम, जैसे आर्टिफिशियल एंकर है, एआई एंकर है, न्यूज़ रूम में इनका इस्तेमाल बढ़ता जा रहा है, तो आप इसको किस रूप में लेते हैं? चुनौती, संभावना, या आप इसको किस तरह से देखते हैं?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
जो एआई एंकर्स जो आजकल यूज़ कर रहे हैं न्यूज़ रूम्स में, तो उसको आप किस रूप में देखते हैं? चुनौती के रूप में या संभावना के रूप में? आपका क्या मतलब, इस पे क्या विचार है आपके?
No, I think it's interesting, but I don't think an AI anchor can ever replace a real anchor. But I think it's interesting. It's an interesting model. It's an interesting gimmick for now. Let's see how it unfolds. AI, of course, can be used in newsrooms, but it always, I think it needs a human intelligence as well for the editorial decisions. So, I mean, of course, I think I'm sure it can help in maybe compiling lists and news lists and things like that. But I don't think AI anchors is something we've
फिलहाल हमने इसको
seriously thought
entertainment के लिए बनाया हुआ है.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
about.
Hello, Sonia.
Sorry,
I'm a student of Dheeraj. I'm a student of IMC,
Yes.
New Delhi. My name is Dheeraj Kumar.
Hello,
This is a
Dheeraj.
headline from Wire. Amidst Adani's takeover, senior journalist Ravish Kumar resigns from NDTV. So my question is, how far change in ownership of media channels affects the content of news channel?
I don't know if I should answer that or you should answer that.
All right,
Yes, sir.
let's go to the next one. Okay. Yes.
I'd just say for any brand, of course, the biggest bonus is credibility, and I'm sure that any management will be looking very carefully at that aspect. But ultimately, the decision of the judge of credibility is not the person in the newsroom, but all of you.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you foresee AI being used in media in the future? Because I was reading that editor, and he told me that while he manages to do just 3 posts, his rival is able to do 1,000 posts just using the AI. So, how do you see it playing out in the future?
See, I think it can be used it will be used much more in a conveyor belt way. So I think there will be that element of it, of course, that it is efficient, there's a speed. So it will be incorporated into newsroom operations, but I still believe, and maybe I'm old-fashioned, that in journalism it is the individual which makes the difference still. I mean, all of you will have individual journalists, individual bylines, individual stories, which is something which is really premium. And I think in a world where AI can replace a lot of things, I think individuality is something which hopefully isn't, I know it's on its way that AI can even mimic individual characteristics, but the original will still be better. So it will be a challenge. It will be a challenge, especially for young people coming in. But I think that's where it's extremely important for passion, commitment, dedication, the willingness to go the extra mile for young people, which will prove crucial now.
Hello, ma'am.
आपने पूछा हाँ. Yes, yes. So we are waiting for our honorable governor. He will be here in next 16 minutes, as said. So we can stretch it. Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
We can get other Sukumar up as well.
Yes,
or
sir.
whatever. We can
It will
get
be
other
great.
people up
No,
as
that
well.
will be actually.
Sukumar, don't relax.
There will be
Don't
less
relax.
cat, please. I was in fact thinking if we
We'll
could
come
do
on.
now an open forum, since we have 15 minutes. I would request you to join us here.
You had
Can
lots
we
of
get one more
people.
chair here? Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah.
I just wanted to say something actually, which I know Ruhail kindly asked me for a keynote, which I didn't have time to do. But one thing I think which we need to look at very seriously in the next years ahead is the democratization of newsrooms. I think we've seen that it's happened in politics, it's happened in society. But I think in media newsrooms, especially English newsrooms, we have failed on that aspect. And I really do feel that this is the time when we need to look self-introspect on how we reflect the aspirations of rapidly changing India with its opportunities and challenges, and see how we get the voices and the journalists to be much more representative of that India. I think we still find in newsrooms, especially in English TV newsrooms, business newsrooms, that they come mainly from the big cities like Delhi, Mumbai, maybe some from Bangalore. So I think that is the next big challenge that newsrooms need to face to stay relevant. So I think that's what, and I'm very happy with IIMC that I see students coming from all over. So I'd love to see those applications much more, but not only IIMC, because there are many, many students who can't get in to such a prestigious institute. So how we broad base is something which is very important for all of us editors to think about.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sir. आप बोलिए.
I have 2 questions. One is TRP being purchased? First question. Second question, I don't know whether you will be able to answer it or not. Because TRP only in the TV news or the electronic media, not on the print media. I have not seen any TRP on the print media. First question. Second question, like in the print media, if you see the first page on the political, second miscellaneous, then third page criminal, crime, and then sports pages are there. Similarly, the TV channels, they should have a menu, sports, tourism, food,
Okay.
like that. That should be a menu. Oh, this tourism I can see on that. Health I will see at that time.
Okay,
Sure, so that's a suggestion. You can get that on websites. On television, it's a bit harder. On TRPs being purchased, well, NDTV is not buying, so that's that's all I'll say.
all right, yes.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, sir. Actually, my question is that what's the actual need for opinion or exit polls? Like, is it actual news for the general public or just for the likability factor? Just I want to ask that, does it influence the general public's interest or decisions while voting?
No, I mean, the current form in which polling is done in this country, there's zero scope of it influencing the outcome of elections. That was your question, right? Do opinion polls, right? And everyone wants to know who's going to win, who's going to lose. I mean, this is not unique to this country. Opinion polling is like, I mean, it's an age-old, established, universal thing that everyone wants to know, I mean, all over the world. Have you seen the kind of coverage that goes around the US presidential election? I mean, there are websites that spring up which just like do nothing else for an entire year, right? So I think it's legitimate journalism. What I find especially interesting about it is it's become much more sophisticated now. It's become much more broad-based now. There are agencies that are using really high-end mathematical techniques now. And of course, websites, TV channels, I've started using really interesting graphical representations of this. Well, what's not to like? It's good fun.
Hello?
I see a lot of hands raising with this
Sir,
gentleman here. Okay,
I have a question.
I'll come to you. I'll come to you. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Saksham, and I am a student as well. So my question was that, like, for example, there's a media house which works in, like, focus on law. So, and if that media is just focusing on digital platform, so what can that digital media do exactly to be successful enough? Because there's a lot of competition going on.
Sorry.
There's a media platform which focuses only on law, so how does it?
Law.
Yes.
How can that?
Like law.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
And how will they be?
Successful enough because there is a lot of competition. For example, you
So
said
how to
live
stand
law,
out? I mean, how can a
Define success.
to be recognized, because
There are two big entities of this sort that you mentioned in this country. Both are very well recognized. Both are, live law and bar and bench. How do you define success? You can define success in ultimately, because all of these are businesses, the only way to define success is profitability, right? And I guess both of them are adequately profitable because they keep hiring people. One of them poached my legal editor 2 years back, which means, they must be capable of paying fairly decent salaries. Right? The thing is, these are niche media, right? And the only challenge that you have with niche media is your definition of success cannot be disproportionate. Right? So even if you were to move outside of law, if you look at startups, for instance, there are these websites like Ken and Morning Context, which do a lot of interesting work. They'll probably be profitable at a certain level, but they're never going to be as large as, let's say, NDTV, right? So but, I mean, you just have to redefine your. So your runway is probably a maximum of $8-10 million. It's not going to be higher than that. And I'm speaking in terms of revenue. I'm not speaking in terms of anything else. So you just have to do that.
I think what's interesting with live law and these other things is that they identified a gap in the market. And I thought that was interesting, that they're looking at something, they say there's a lot of interest in it, media is not really representing this enough. So I thought that's an interesting space to look at, that if somebody's mad, like even about elections, I know people Prannoy Roy, who the founder of NDTV, was obsessed with elections. So it's always nice to take an obsession and turn it into something which, which people respect. So I think that is very important. So I think in that sense, I'm not a business journalist like Sukumar, so profits is always something that has to be drummed into me. But I think they've managed to, fulfill their passion or their commitment. And I think that's really something which is quite laudatory in today's world.
But for example, like,
are you working with them or are you applying to them? Because then we can discuss
ma'am,
that
actually,
later.
I'm working under Law Opinion, and I'm the CEO of it. Me and my colleagues have started it just recently this year.
Law website.
Yes, a website, and we do also have the print media, but yeah. So it's like we've just started. We've just taken out the first edition.
More power to you. Yeah, great.
Thank you so much.
That's
sir.
great to do that while you're a student.
He has one more question, okay?
Yeah. So, sir, earlier you said that TV media has weaknesses, and one of the weaknesses are that they are not covering the whole nation, the news covering the whole nation. So why not the other media houses do that to, cover the whole news? Because I think that this can be a factor for, being success.
Yeah, I mean, there are enough people who do that. What I was telling you was that typically TV gets obsessed with a big story, right? Previously, when you used to look at any news, you had a wide variety of news, both geographically wide and thematically wide, which has now got significantly restricted. So if you look at big stories that are playing out, they're just like one story that keeps playing on loop, and everything else is either not covered at all or not mentioned. Your question is, why are the others not doing it? The reason, and again I mentioned this, the reason why TV doesn't go broad and wide in this country is because of an economic reason, right? I mean, it's just very difficult to have a TV channel that covers every corner of this country using, cameramen and videos and everything else, and it's just far too expensive. It's far easier. It's much more economically viable to have the talking head format of journalism, isn't it? It's cheaper.
Well, it falls into that same kind of TRP model, because again, if TRPs are measured by boxes. Now, if your boxes are in certain geographies, so Mrs. Bombay will have many more, or Mumbai will have many more boxes than, say, Assam. So then, the logic then translates, you do more news out of Bombay and less out of Assam. Now, if you're going to follow this logic in a newsroom that you only do news which will get more viewers, it is going to be something which will tilt your editorial balance or your editorial breadth of your coverage. So I think that is something, again, which there are many, many questions about the current TRP model. And I'm a big thing that when we look at the BBC model in the UK may not be the ideal one, but I do think we need to enter a phase in India where we look at journalism almost as an essential service and then cannot be kept with all the same pressures and pulls of also being a profitable business. There has to be some kind of rethink on the revenue models. And I think for television especially, the revenue models currently are very, very faulty.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. You have asked already one question. Yes, please. Yeah. Okay, Mike.
Hello.
Actually, the revenue models are faulty for everyone at this point in time, not just television.
Yes,
I mean, it doesn't work for anyone.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you. Go on. Yeah.
सर मेरे पास दो क्वेश्चन थे सर. एक तो उन्होंने पूछ लिया.
आप कहाँ से थोड़ा इंट्रोडक्शन आपके बारे में?
आई एम कमलेश सर फ्रॉम EJ IMC. सर मेरे साथ दो क्वेश्चन थे. एक तो उन्होंने पूछा, दूसरा है क्या सर? सर क्वेश्चन मेरा
नहीं ठीक है, आप सुन रहे हैं, हम सुन रहे हैं. ये वर्किंग, इट्स वर्किंग. नहीं आप माइक चल रही है. हाँ
सर, क्वेश्चन ये है सर कि जब कभी भी देश में कोई घटना बड़ी होती है तो न्यूज़ चैनल ज़्यादा देखा जाने लगता है. जैसे कि लॉकडाउन में जो बड़े बड़े न्यूज़ चैनल है उनके यूट्यूब पे बहुत कम सब्सक्राइब थे. 19 मिलियन थे, किसी के 20 मिलियन थे. जैसे ही लॉकडाउन आया उसके बाद अभी 50 मिलियन हो गए हैं. और जो भी घटनाएं घटती हैं, जैसे कुछ नहीं तो जनता के हित में होती हैं, कुछ ऐसी होती हैं, सीमा इधर का केस वो मतलब चलता ही रहा 2 महीने. तो इस तरीके से मतलब मुझे जानना है कि हम भी रिपोर्टर बनने वाले हैं कुछ समय में और कंपटीशन तो ज़्यादा है ही, तो हम ऐसे कैसे कैटर करें कि फाइनेंशियली भी सपोर्ट कर पाएँ अपने आप को, जर्नलिज्म भी संभाल पाएँ. दोनों बहुत कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है.
ऐसे ट्रिवियल स्टोरीज ना करें. हाँ, राइट. You want to answer it, Sonia?
As in, I haven't
So,
really
so he's
understood.
saying like we run Seema Haider story for a couple of months and he's at the verge of getting into journalism. How does he save himself from getting into?
NDTV didn't cover the Seema Haider story very much. I was wondering, oh, अच्छा, वो Seema Haider story, हाँ. नहीं, जैसे if you go to any, it is a challenge, of course, अभी media houses में hiring के लिए, but I would say that the big issue is if you get a job in a reputed media house, hopefully you will not be covering stories like Seema Haider all the time, but I know that's difficult. I think in the first 2 years, just do everything. Do everything, try everything, work harder than anyone else. That really is what is going to make you stand out. The first 2 years of your journalism life will set your future. So you just have to, at that time, don't say ki this is not me, this is not me. Don't just work hard. Work hard, your work will speak for itself, and then take a call after at least 2 years. But give it 2 years of commitment, of passion and dedication, and then take your call.
And it's very important to also be innovative and imaginative about this. I mean, there is a gentleman here from my organization who's sitting who anchored a page 2 story, and page 2 stories in Hindustan Times are these gigantic stories on Seema Haider. We were one of the first newsrooms to cover it, and it was a very sensitive story of what was happening. So there are ways in which you can do it. So I think sometimes what happens is, and I often tell people this story from many, many years ago. I will not name the individuals concerned because both are now very famous. So one was a marketing reporter, the other one was a long-form reporter. They used to sit next to each other in my newsroom when I used to work in Mint. And the marketing person got a press release from Pepsi about a new flavor of chips that had been launched. So she looked at it and put it on the table. And then this guy looked at it and said, "Do you mind if I follow this up?" So she said, "Mint doesn't cover product releases." So he said, "No, I know, but I just want to look at it." So then he reached out to the company. He asked them, "How do you decide which flavor to launch?" So they put him in touch with one guy who does research on flavors in India. And he did this fabulous 2,000-word story on how companies decide what flavors to use for their products in India. So, you know, it's just a question of being... So there are stories all around us. Part of your job as a journalist is to identify what is a story and how to tell it.
और आप मतलब सर बोल रहे हैं कि आप उसमें भी कुछ ऐसा ढूंढ सकते हो जो बहुत ही अच्छी स्टोरी बन सकती है. There's some noise at the back. Can I request everyone to be silent?
मेरे ख्याल से अगर आपके प्रश्न को तर्क वितर्क के रूप से देखा जाए तो अगर सीमा हैदर की न्यूज़ में दम नहीं होता तो आज इतने बड़े फोरम में उस न्यूज़ की डिस्कशन नहीं हो रही होती.
That's the other way of looking at it. और सर ने इससे पहले भी बता दिया, as Sonia ji also said that 2 साल आपको जर्नलिज्म में मतलब ऐसा नहीं है आपको भागना है, right sir? You said that, right? 2-4 साल लगेंगे आपको वो सब देखने में, tough life, right?
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity. I just received a question and I'd like to quote it. It seems people are being seen more eager to use social media, digital media, and short news apps like InShorts. Where do you think the future of print media is going with all this?
Nowhere. I mean, like I said, we are the only... first of all, we don't define ourselves as print media, right? I mean, I never say every time someone asks me, I say I work in a newsroom because we've always done a variety of things. In 2008, for instance, when I was in Mint, I gave every one of my reporters a high-definition handheld video camera to shoot videos and post them on the website, right? Irrespective of whether there is traction or not. I mean, so everyone is pretty much a multimedia journalist now. But I think the advantage that print has at this point in time, like I said, is that we seem to be the only people who are investing in journalism and journalists and reporters. Many other newsrooms are not really investing in research, they're not investing in travel, they're not investing in reporters. Their focus seems to be investing in other things, right? And that gives us a natural advantage. It is an advantage that is rapidly drying up because print business models themselves are under challenge. So the question is, how do you sustain a profitable newsroom with revenues coming down? And So print is not going anywhere. Right? First of all, I wouldn't define it as print. Right? Journalism is not going anywhere, and I think a lot of us. If you ask Sonia, she's not going to tell you that she's a TV journalist. She's a journalist, just like I'm a journalist. And 10 years from now, we'll probably still be journalists. But, you know.
You mean like politicians will never retire? Oh God. No, but I just taking from what Sukumar says, I think again, so this whole investing in journalists, and I think that's something that I and Sukumar, of course, and are extremely passionate about. And I think that's why this 40 under 40 is something that we spend our Saturday mornings coming and doing, because it's so fantastic to see young people who really, I think often, you think, jaise aapne pucha tha, you know, young people, nobody cares about young journalists. I think they really are the future and the hope of this profession. I think investing, I think NDTV had become, is still an institute where I know that once they've got the NDTV tag, that other television channels will grab them within a year at much higher salaries. Yet many of them have stayed on despite that, because they believe in NDTV, and that's really something which makes us all very happy. And I think the Chief Justice said recently, you can be a good lawyer and a good person, and I think that applies in journalism as well. You can be a good journalist and a good person. Our responsibility today is to mentor the next generation. I see so many people sitting here, Tehseen, Ankit, Priyanshi, many people sitting here who will go on to do many things. But the point is that the ethical core of a good journalist will never change. That's what we hope good editors can give wherever they are. And that's really, I think, what this whole function about today is. And I think now we should let them have a coffee break.
Yeah. No, one last question, and and the Chief Guest has come, and one last question, yes.
So, hi Sonia and Sukumar. A question on citizen journalism.
Can you please introduce yourself? Yeah.
Okay, so this is Anurag Kulshrestha here. Hi Sonia and Sukumar. We've exchanged some emails also. So, a question on citizen journalism. And I mean, why is it that we are kind of, you know, there aren't any forums or platforms in terms of when, you know, some real happenings and events need to be shared by individuals. And I know, I mean, most of the channels and you guys look at it more as a, you know, as a topic or a subject. So, except for one or two recent platforms like In Shorts, so what is it that we can do? How is it we are addressing? Because when you try to reach out to channels, it's not easy, and I've tried myself, including certain stories on crime, law, and police, etc. And when people try to raise voices, etc., they bring out the reality. Their phones are hacked and whatnot. So what is it that can be done on that?
So citizen journalism. I mean, we just had Elon Musk at the US-Mexico border doing citizen journalism. But I have to say that the only thing that worries me about citizen journalism is the lack of editorial controls and balances. It had become very popular about 5 to 8 years ago when it became this kind of buzzword in citizen journalism. But there were problems raised with how much of it was on individual interest, with the fact that there is no editorial oversight on stories like that. What is the source? What is the motive? What is the reason? It became a bit of a problem, which is not to say that there's been absolutely fantastic citizen journalism done, but I think there is still, we haven't managed to work out a kind of system where there is all the alarm bells are taken care of. I'm sure it can be worked out, but it's something that I think newsrooms haven't managed yet, so I'm still a little bit wary of it, though of course, there are many, many cases where stories would not have come to light or huge exclusives not have happened without citizen journalism. So it's not something which I'm against in any way, but I do think that there are some questions, which is why some newsrooms stay away from it.
Sorry. That's it. Oh my God. What do we do with these two questions? Okay. All right. Okay. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Here's another NDTV product.
Okay, thank you so much.